price.
Pioneers of video art, Santa Fe's Stena and Woody Vasulka take us into their world.
You know, it's no fun to go and say, today I'm going to make a masterpiece. That is of no interest to me.
In his own time, artist Andy Warhol pushed the boundaries of what defined art, challenging expectations with his portrayals of popular culture.
He was constantly looking at the current news, to the newspaper, to magazines.
And Shodike is a beatboxer turning the tables on traditional art forms.
Because there were some people who didn't like that I was beatboxing for ballet.
Islamic artist Uza Mirza paints Arabic words as musical notes, combining music and faith.
Every piece of art I do, I can't explain how I did it. It was meant to be.
Photographer A.D. Wheeler has found art in the decay of urban landscapes.
I got bored of shooting the normal everyday stuff.
This program is made possible in part by New Mexico Arts, a division of the Department of Cultural Affairs, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Major figures in video art, Stena and Woody Vasulka, are pioneers who have contributed enormously to the evolution of the medium.
When you see this, so this basically has something to do with morphology. It takes an ordinary object and imprints a vision. Stena, I need your little help here. My name is Woody Vasulka.
Okay, you got it. And my name is Stena Vasulka.
See, I was a poet, then I was a filmmaker, then I was a video maker, then I don't call myself that because now I use a computer.
If you are in video, you start out as video or film before or whatever, and then you go through this endless evolution of the equipment. So you end up being what, a digital artist?
People ask me, what do you do? I never say, ich bin ein Künstler. This is just a crazy sort of statement to make.
We always say video maker, not video artist. Other people can call us artists, but we cannot. This is a very old European opinion that you cannot self-nominate to be an artist. So I hope after all those years I kind of am, but if I'm not, that's also okay.
Yeah, but I guess it's going through, isn't it? Yeah, okay. Well, let me just do some senseless movements. Absolutely senseless. Neither of us can paint or do a kind of sculptures and none of that. But she could use the tones, like we had a synthesizer, audio synthesizer, and she immediately, after we entered this idea that the sound synthesizer can drive image, that's her leitmotif.
Yeah, but I'm glad you used the word sound. You could also say audio, sound or audio. It's not music. No. See, we don't use music. In order to be able to distort the image this way, I had to clean it up, filter it into a sine wave. And then I could make it to a complex sine wave, inverted sine wave. Looks a lot like Hegel scan. It is the sound of my bowing that is distorting the picture.
I'm kind of an opposite. I take sound out of the image, because these two things become to us both the building material. This is the material of electronic sound and image. Media is the same language for all of us. It has a different code, and we share the code. And suddenly we have these visual and acoustic and other codes that we communicate easily.
You say code, you use the word code as your art material, and I am more inclined to use the word signal for my art material, and it comes out of our background. So you were more into engineering and building things and then being in the film, and I come out of music where there is always a signal.
In our work, which is experimentation with electronic images, we came to the point of wanting to explore computer images. And in the summer of 1978, we decided to build a digital image tool.
Because that time there were some computers, but they were not structural. You couldn't program them the way that we wanted. So we had to build a whole machine to do it. I had to physically put it together. So this was my job. And this was first machine that revealed to us how to create and establish the language.
And this is the device. It's computer controlled, operated through a keyboard.
This is such a demo of the magic of the image, to be able to change the shape and reshape it and all those things. It doesn't have to be in a frame. See, I'm still there in the picture.
The whole confinement of the frame is totally useless and it's totally obsolete. And it gave me actually a kick into this whole new way of thinking, because frame is the narrative system of the narrative content. See, once we eliminate that, then we could actually work in a spatial syntax. But that's such a big thing to define that we are still just stumbling over this. But I mean, if I would have another life, this is where I would go.
It is just a great victory for me to free the image out of the frame.
It almost has its own strategy. That's what I like the system. Like you can just put yourself into a system that is completely kind of outside of existence. But I go into this medium, and that medium I negotiate, and the medium says, this time it's time for this step, and I obey. There is no longer order, you know, of the nature and life. You are there, but not there. It's not you actually, but it is you. People sometimes call it art, sometimes not.
It can be art, yeah. It depends on what you do with it. That's when it can become an art, when you go away from just staring at yourself. Although the narcissistic form is a very beautiful one.
But we are trying to put a language on it and actually get the control. Unfortunately, we humans cannot live out of control because we don't know what it means.
You know, it's no fun to go and say, today I'm going to make a masterpiece that is of no interest to me, but today I'm going to play with the material and see what is offered. That interests me.
The works of Warhol are for the first time shown alongside the artists that reinterpret, respond, and react to Warhol's groundbreaking work.
The exhibition is meant to be a look at Warhol and his impact on contemporary art of the last 50 years. Warhol was willing to embrace anything, and that's the Warhol effect.
Well, it's a very large show, so there are 157 works total, and 51 of those are by Warhol.
In each grouping of works, there'll be a Warhol, or maybe two Warhols, and a group of works by other artists. Each grouping is meant to introduce other approaches to what Warhol set out.
The first section is a very large section called Daily News, From Banality to Disaster. He was constantly looking at the current news, to the newspaper, to magazines.
Warhol's sources were so often the most banal of subjects, but also from the Daily News, he took disasters. And he would make paintings based on that.
So then that section moves into an area that has to do with American consumerism, with logos, and how other artists like Ai Weiwei have appropriated those images.
For me, one of the exciting things about the show is to see Warhol juxtaposed with, for example, an artist named Hans Haacke. And he carries the Warhol example into very political dimensions. So here he's using the look of packaging, like Warhol's soup can, to then make a political statement about where cigarettes are made and this Senator Jesse Helms. There's lots of surprises like that, where artists can carry the Warhol example.
Another very large section is the portraiture section. We call it Celebrity and Power. I be your mirror. I be your mirror. For me, the 1964 turquoise Marilyn is such an iconic image and is so beautiful to begin with. It's absolutely electric in terms of its turquoise coloration. I love the fact that Marilyn said that Marilyn was the veil that she wore over Norma Jean, and I think that Warhol really sort of understood that there was some other human being beneath all of this blonde hair and color.
In 1960, in New York, there were almost no people making portraits. We have Warhol's diamond dust portrait of Joseph Beuys to exemplify Warhol celebrating artists. So behind me is a famous portrait by Chuck Close of the musician Phil Glass. There's also a photograph Richard Avedon made of Truman Capote. There's a painting by Alex Katz of the poet Ted Berrigan. So this gives you a sense of how, with Warhol as an example, things expand out and become very exciting.
There's another section called Queer Studies, which is really about assumed personalities, the idea that identity, especially sexual identity, is something that can be altered, can be used in a kind of fluid and shifting and changing way. And then the last sections are really more about Warholian techniques. There's a section called Consuming Images about abstraction, seriality, and repetition. And it begins with a wonderful image of the Mona Lisa. So the rest of the gallery is in part about how other artists have absorbed this appropriation technique. And then there is a section called No Boundaries, and it really has to do with this wonderful kind of explosion of the whole Warholian phenomenon and the idea that art really can be anything.
One of the interesting things about doing this exhibition was to think about how alive the legacy is right now. Ryan Trecartin is a filmmaker. If you compare them to the Andy Warhol films, you quickly realize that Ryan Trecartin is a descendant of Andy Warhol. The show of his work opened a little over a year ago and was met by unbelievable praise. If a contemporary artist is still moved by Andy Warhol, and that artist happens to be so celebrated, then the Warhol effect is still with us.
Our idea about the exhibition was not simply an idea of direct influence, but the impact through the culture of Warhol, but also not with the idea that this is the definitive show. It should get people talking. I would hope that people think about where Warhol's impact goes beyond the galleries and to have a kind of heightened awareness when they next go to galleries or to a department store or flip through a magazine or surf the web, and how Warhol will seem very ever-present.
I be a mirror.
Shodike is a professional beatbox artist and vocal percussionist with a dynamic and improvisational style. He explains how he's accompanying more traditional artists with elements of hip-hop culture.
Moment in transitioning to my career as a musician. I think I've always wanted to work within varying genres of music, and I didn't realize it until these opportunities sort of came to me. Like, for example, I was our musical accompanist for this poetry event called Slamside, and it was my job to accompany the other musicians and the other spoken word artists. And there was one fateful day, January 2006, Vincent Thomas, a professor of modern dance here at Towson University, was in the audience. He approached me about having me come in and play music for a dance class. I thought he meant for like a week or two, or maybe 2 weeks, but he meant for the entire semester actually. So when that happened, a whole new world just opened up to me. I was at that point willing and able to take it to anywhere just to see where I stood as a musician, if I could match wits with these different forms, whether it was in dance or even the visual arts, doing musical interpretations of still work and trying to find ways to have music as a tool bring the artwork to life, those sorts of challenges. And also to not just challenge myself, but to challenge the people within these genres who aren't used to these sorts of experiences, to kind of challenge their notions or preconceived ideas of what a beatboxer is supposed to do or not supposed to do. Because there were some people who didn't like that I was beatboxing for ballet, but I kind of didn't care because I was there not just to challenge myself, but to challenge them too. I know I always want to work as an accompanist for dance. It's not even a performance, it's like praying for self-improvement, not just for myself, but for the professor, the students. It's a very unique experience that kind of goes beyond any description through words. I just want to keep myself inspired, keep others inspired, keep myself from burning out, doing a lot of work for little to nothing. Fundraising is an art form I want to master. I'm working on that.
Islamic artist Uzma Mirza, who paints Arabic words as musical notes, combining music and faith.
Call Fort Wayne's Uzma Mirza, an architect by trade, a poet, a musician, a philanthropist, a painter with shows around the country. But if you ask me, she's a seeker.
I was born and I woke up in this world, forgot where I came from. The whole journey is about remembering, which is called dhikr, or reminder, who I am. And that's the quest. It's this word that's often misused in the Islamic world called jihad. Really, the jihad really means is a war with the self. It's to know the self. So my art is about knowing the self.
Uzma was born in Nova Scotia and worked in the States, and wants her followers to cast all preconceptions aside. For in spite of its ancient roots, her art is uniquely homegrown. Part of Uzma's Islamic art takes the Arabic names from the Quran and arranges them as musical scores.
like Al-Ghafur, which is the forgiving, or An-Nur, the light. And each of these are actual names with the Arabic letters. These are notes, they're flowing, and we can reflect them, and they're like the notes of God. I go further and say it is finding the heart of the Tin Man. And the sustainable human is a Tin Man. The art is finding that heart as a Muslim woman. I have found it, I just need to clean it. I'm polishing it every day, daily, till I die.
For A.D. Wheeler, it's all about the location. He travels the country focusing on the old, the broken down, and the abandoned.
My name is A.D. Wheeler, and I'm an abandoned scape and landscape photographer. Well, I first got into the actual art of decay or shooting the urban landscapes when I guess I got bored of shooting the normal everyday stuff. I by no means shot it all, but I felt like I had. So I think a little bit of maybe ADD kicked in, and I wanted to go and do something different, and it's definitely different. We do a lot of research. I mean, a lot of times we'll contact the owners and find out the real condition of the building, and if they're interested in us having us do a shoot. A lot of places are trying to be saved, so in doing our exposure of these places, we can help them get funding to maybe save an old historic building, like this one. Without a doubt, my favorite location that I've shot at recently was an abandoned mining town in Nevada called the El Dorado Mining Company. It was established back in the 1800s, and this place is just loaded with old vehicles and old mining equipment and working mine and just amazing stuff. And a family has taken it over and kind of made it as a secret destination for tourists who happen to be smart enough to look it up. It's just very cool. And probably the other location, which I really liked a lot, was Eastern State Penitentiary down in Philadelphia. That was a really amazing shoot. Just so much history there, Al Capone, and they preserved it in decay, which is amazing, because a lot of places, you know, they'll fix up the ceilings and walls so no one gets hurt there, but they did a smart thing down there. They actually put up fencing and things to keep the rubble from falling and kept the rubble there. So it's really cool to see people preserving that and allowing us in there to shoot and take the art that we do from there. Photo walks are groups of people, and the last photo walk I did was 35 people came with me up to Watkins Glen State Park, and we went through the park, and the whole idea is that everybody brings a camera. Doesn't matter what kind of camera it is. It can be point and shoot, it can be a DSLR, it can be a video camera, it doesn't matter. Everybody shoots something different, and then we all share it together on Facebook or Google+. And we get to see through another photographer's or another artist's eyes. And that's a great learning experience across the board. From amateurs to professionals, it just is a great experience. Everything I do, I process myself, and I also feature on my website. I also feature tutorials on my workflow and how I process my photos, so people can go to YouTube and watch those and kind of learn from those as well. I'm big on teaching other folks what I do. I don't really keep anything other than my locations sometimes a secret. For someone who wants to get into photography as a profession, I would probably tell them to run. Now, I would probably tell them to be prepared to make it your life. Like anything in life that you want to succeed at, you really have to be in it 100%. 80%, 60% is great for a hobby, But if you want to do it as a living and you really, that's your desire in life, get with some good photographers, get critiques, learn, and never stop learning. That's probably the most important tip that I can give. Every day I learn something new about photography, and that's what keeps me in it, keeps me fresh, and keeps me going. And I think the day that I stop learning will be the day that I just stop photography, and I don't foresee that ever happening.
Next time on Colores.
Photographer Michael Berman shows us what is beyond the science of ecology by capturing the open spaces of New Mexico's wilderness.
I think art is really a way, and aesthetics is a way that I can look at the whole and admit I don't understand it.
For decades, an art contest has been helping to preserve waterfowl and wildlife refuge areas.
Since 1934, hunters have essentially been taxing themselves to raise money to buy habitat to preserve the resource they use, which is waterfowl.
A painting that captures an unforgettable moment in American history.
Lloyd's intent was really to create a theatrical rendition of this heroic event.
Artist Alan Christian keeps his artistic priorities straight.
That's kind of the attitude I take about making art. You're experimenting, you're playing, and you're trying to have fun.
Until next time, thank you for watching.